The 1990s. We was getting so much money back then. If you ask me how, I really can't explain it. It just seemed like money was falling out the sky. I know I used to gamble a lot back then. You know, in the game room on Pine Street between Belmont and Picking. Rest in peace to the owner, Mike. That was like my second home. I used to gamble every day. My homie Starsky told me, Redmine, you hustling backwards. I asked him how, and then he explained, all that money you making, and you losing it every day gambling. But I was in denial. It took me a while to actually understand what he was trying to tell me. But him telling me that actually was the reason that I stopped gambling like a few years later. My mindset was different back then. I was just young and enjoying life. I did want to invest my money at that age, but I didn't know how. I asked my grandmother in Cambridge Heights, how could I buy a house? But she just brushed me off. She was like, you too young and houses are headaches. So instead, I wasted my money. My ex-girlfriend Melanie took me to the Poconos with her job, so I ended up unexpectedly putting $4,000 down and I purchased a timeshare villa. It was only like $300 to $400 a month to hold on to it, and I ended up holding on to it for like years, probably over a decade. But I only went there actually a few times. I only used it just to escape. And I kept spending money on so much unnecessary things. I was in the strip clubs every week, throwing dollars, shopping every week. It was a time in my life I brought a new pair of sneakers every week. And I would just stuff them under my bed. Then I realized I couldn't wear all these sneakers. And some of them got so dusty from me taking them out the box and pushing them all the way up under my bed that I had to throw them out without ever getting a chance to wear them one time. In hindsight, I realized I was just spending so much money chasing temporary happiness. People believe that money is the key to happiness, but it's not. Money just creates opportunities to be happy. But if you're not happy within, there will always be a void that you are constantly trying to fill. And I was still so young, still finding myself in the world. I was either a teenager or in my early 20s at that time, and I ran with a crew of other teenagers. We was never a gang, but we was a crew of brothers and honorary sisters. A gang actually has hierarchy, but I told my brothers there will be no leaders because we are all bosses. I always wanted for my brothers what I wanted for myself. If I shine, they shine. If they shine, I shine. That's how it was back then. And every time we showed up on the block, it was like a car show. Imagine a group of young teenagers and everybody pulling up in foreign cars. All the foreign cars just lined up. And then imagine how much hate that would bring. In the 1990s, East New York was the most dangerous place in New York City. Shootouts every day and murders every week. Look back at those statistics. Being a getting money pretty boy chasing women made you a target of hate in that era. That was the era of velour suits and army fatigues. But me and my friends, we was out there with $400 polo knits and Versace shirts pushing foreign cars in the era where a lot of people never had cars. So while we was worried about the women and the money, the wolves was out there worried about us. There was a lot of things that had to be done in them streets for us to be able to walk freely. In street life, you have to match aggression with aggression. I was told to never let anyone take anything from you, because then you will become a victim for life. That's the only reason I never got robbed, because I was prepared to die for mine. The life expectancy for a black male in my hood at that time was in your 20s. So we lived every day like it was our last, and every day was a celebration or some form of chasing happiness in a gloomy hood that was surrounded by death. I had a cousin that had just brought a brand new GS Lexus around that time. You know, this was around the time in the 90s when Lexus was the new kings of the auto industry. He had the cream joint. He was in his early 20s, rocking Versace. He was the one that put me on to Versace. He had 2 houses that he had just brought and put under a family member's name. You know how that go. He was getting a lot of money. He was rocking solid gold Cubans just like me. But you know how jealousy goes. He had an argument with this older Jamaican guy. My cousin was part of my brotherhood. He was becoming very popular at that time. You know how the older guys get when the younger guys start to shine. So they end up having a fight. My cousin wrapped his solid gold Cuban link around his fist and he fought the guy. But the guy got the best of my cousin and ended up taking my cousin's chain. There was somebody in my cousin's head around that time and kept rubbing it in around the time after my cousin had that fight. Kept laughing at my cousin, teasing my cousin about losing his chain. And my cousin wasn't a punk. I heard that one time my cousin busted this guy open with a razor while the guy was sucking a peppermint and the peppermint fell out the guy's cheek. Not to glamorize that, but that's just so you can understand that my cousin was nobody to be played with. But someone kept teasing my cousin, kept teasing him about that chain. My cousin could have replaced the chain with no problem, but in the streets, our reputation and our pride outweighs everything. And eventually, my cousin will become a target for all the wolves. Remember, he was out there getting money. So allegedly, one day he went looking to get his chain back. And I mean allegedly, one day he found the guy, but the guy no longer had his chain because he had pawned it and brought a brand new car. So allegedly, my cousin walks up while the guy was sitting in his car and talking to this woman that was standing next to the car. I'm not sure if words was exchanged, but there was gunfire. Weeks later, my cousin's pictures posted all over the place. And he was either America's Most Wanted, New York's Most Wanted, or something like that. And just like that, lives would change. When we was out there getting money, we didn't worry about saving money. Remember what I said earlier, the life expectancy of a young black male in East New York at that time was only in our 20s. So every day we got money, we spent money. We didn't worry about the future too much because we lived in the moment. So then when situations like this arise, you have to scramble for all the money you got out there in the streets. Friends turn into strangers when your back is against the wall. People that owe you money start ducking your calls. You're on the run now, so you can't go back to your houses and get to your safes. The people you felt that you could trust by leaving the houses in their name, all of a sudden they act like they can't get to your money either. And just like that, you go from having everything to being on the run with nothing. Now, if you ask me, did I help a fugitive by giving them money? Yep, that's my family. He wasn't even my first cousin. He was my second cousin, my cousin's cousin. But that's still family to me. I couldn't turn my back on family. If I got it, you got it, if you really need it. I didn't give him enough to disappear, but I gave him enough where he didn't have to worry about starving anytime soon. I told my cousin I would have enough for him to disappear by the end of the week. Meanwhile, my cousin is in my hood full time now. And remember, all these reward posters are everywhere with his face on it. This was at the time where I just sold my black BMW. Right before I had brought that red convertible BMW that I had with the 7 TVs in it. I had started renting cars every week just to get around. So I had a little red convertible rental and I was driving my cousin down a familiar block in East New York. My cousin had saw these 2 guys he knew and told me to stop the car. But I told my cousin, you on the run. You can't be letting anyone see you out here. But my cousin insisted. He said, nah, they cool. But my cousin was the type of guy that he felt that everybody would be good to him like he are to them. He didn't understand that, some people are just foul. Well, my cousin got out the car to talk to the guys. I just sat in the car and watched from the car. My cousin was all happy and good spirits talking to them, while every once in a while they would glance at each other with a little snakish glare. I could sense the vibes from a mile away. That's what always saved me in many situations, my sixth sense. So I beat my horn to let my cousin know we out. So he gave them dap, hopped in the ride, and then I dropped my cousin off. A couple of days passed, and I got rid of that rental, and I was in my apartment, knocked out sleep. I was in one of those deep sleeps, a mini coma. Probably dreaming about Lisa Bonet or somebody. When my mom's knocked on the door and woke me up, I'd be cranky as hell when somebody awakened me out of my sleep. I told my mother to come in, and she walks in with a strange look on her face. She tells me that there are detectives in the living room and they want to talk to me. I come from a family of jokesters and comedians, so I told my mother, okay, good, I'm tired. I was in the middle of my sleep. Then I laid my head back down and I tried to get back to that dream. But my mother wouldn't leave my room. She shook my leg to wake me back up. She told me she's serious. And now I could actually see it in her eyes that she wasn't joking. It still just didn't make sense to me though. How did the detectives get in our living room? We're from a black family. You know how black families are. We don't answer the door for uninvited guests. So I asked my moms, why did you answer the door? But then my moms explained that she heard them knocking at the door, but she ignored it. Then minutes later, we got a phone call on the house phone. Back then we didn't have call ID on the house phone. So she answered the house phone and it was the downstairs intercom. The cops yelled at my mother over the intercom, open the effing door before we knock it down. Now I'm fully awake. I'm thinking, holy shiznit, knock our door down. We got SWAT in the living room? Now I'm thinking, am I being investigated? Did somebody rat on me about something? Did I leave something crazy in this apartment? Straight panic mode. But I asked my moms, what did they want to talk to me about? She said they wanted to ask you about some guy named blank blank. Sorry I can't tell y'all the name, my cousin's name, but I just want to respect both families, my family and the family of the deceased. So we'll just say blank blank. But my moms didn't know my cousin because he was my second cousin. I'm feeling a little relieved knowing they wasn't here for me. But in my mind, I'm wondering, how did they connect me to my cousin? That's my second cousin. That's a lot of tracing the bloodlines to get all the way back to me. But I get up out of my bed, still in my boxers. I threw on my slippers, and I was ready to head to the living room. I was ready to face that SWAT team, and I was ready to knock my metal front door off the hinges. So I walk into the living room, but there's no SWAT team, just two detectives. And as soon as I approach, the first thing they ask is, where's blank blank? But I denied knowing anybody of that name. They told me they had witnesses that saw him in my car, but I told them I didn't have a car. They looked in their folder all excited like they had something on me, but then I guess they realized I wasn't lying. So they asked me, have you been driving a red convertible recently? I said yes, but that was a rental. I no longer have that car. One of the detectives was so pissed off. I guess he was the bad cop in the good cop, bad cop routine. I know he wanted to slam my head into the living room table for being unbothered by their questions, but the feeling was mutual. They got me sitting in the middle of my living room with my boxers on, asking me the same questions over and over, but they keep getting the same answers. I don't know anything. They woke me up out of my sleep. Plus I realized they didn't have anything on me because they didn't even know we was related. All they had was a tip from somebody that was chasing that reward money. Then the one playing the good cop, he walks over to the wall and stares at all the plaques of my academic achievements. Then he says, "We know you're a good kid, but this guy is bad news. He kills people. You don't want to get mixed up in all of this. But give us a call if you hear from him or if you see him." Then he hands me a card. Then they finally leave. I lock the door, then toss the card into the trash in the kitchen. Knowing they was probably watching me, I didn't go outside that day. I just fell back and stayed in the house. I went outside the next day and explained to my friends what was going on and that we was hot. I tried to find my cousin, but my cousin didn't have a phone, so I just had to wait for him to come around. I heard from a friend a few days later that 2 apartments got rushed in pink houses and they was looking for him. Then a few days later, they found him and he got caught. My cousin has been locked up since the 90s and he's still doing time. It's sad how you could be on top of the world, but your reaction to certain situations can alter your whole life.